don't give your attention away to everybody else or everything else. Focus on you.
Oh, wake up, rethink the status quo. When you get your money right, then you're the one who runs your life. Come build a wealthy spirit with Sammy and Michelle.
The beginning of the year is synonymous with resolutions, big goals, and unfortunately, not reaching those goals. I know I have tried to do big, audacious things in my life, typically a laundry list of things, travel the world, write a book, start a YouTube channel, have a baby, and a lot of times I fall short.
Where's the baby?
Big transformations don't come from just anywhere. And if that's something that you're thinking about, like I have a goal that I want to reach, maybe you have a little bit of fear, like I don't know how to do it. I don't know if I can do it. This is the episode for you. And I'm so excited that we have Harris Jones joining us today because last year she had an amazing year of transformation. From fun details to little cosmetic things starting it out, to growing and pushing herself in different speaking arenas. We're going to talk to Harris about what her journey looked like, how she went from somebody who was self-described as quiet, meek, workaholic, and how she switched that to put herself first and go after her dreams, which includes public speaking and putting herself out there. Her journey is so inspiring because she really took a hold of her own life, and she has actionable tips for anyone who wants to do the same. Right now, Harris is a director of operations at RehabWallet. She's actually one of the first 3 employees there as the company has been growing so fast. And I'm so happy she's taking some time to chat with us today, Sammy, because it's really the stuff she does outside of that or ways she uses her work for new opportunities that I think is so inspiring.
This is really what I needed to hear right now, especially at the beginning of the year. I needed some inspiration on my resolutions and also some guidance. Some of the revelations that she has really hit me and are going to help me with my resolutions this year. So I think you all will find it really helpful as well. Let's get into it.
Harris, welcome to the Build a Wealthy Spirit podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Michelle and Sammy. I'm excited to be here.
We're so excited to chat with you today. I have to start. You went through a physical transformation with your baby teeth. And I really feel like it's a great symbolism for the conversation we're going to have. But can you give us a little bit of background about your teeth?
Absolutely. So my family has this genetic trait that runs through all of us. My mom and my sister and myself, we all have baby teeth. So I had 3 of them at the age of 32. And I went to the orthodontist and I said, hey, I would like to do something about this. I didn't like the way they looked. And my smile is so important to me. And I wanted to be able to present myself in the best way possible. So I went to the orthodontist and I got Invisalign. And as my teeth started to move, one of them became loose. And they were like, you can either pull this one and just do this one or do all of them. So I said, take them all out. Let's just get it done. So we did that. And now I still have my trays in, still getting the work done. But that was a physical transformation that I paid a pretty penny for. But it is what represents me when people first see me. And so I'm so glad that I spent the money on that.
Do you feel like getting your baby teeth removed and the Invisalign changed your confidence or your approach to life at all?
Absolutely. I feel like since it is the first thing that people see, it just makes me happier. I want to smile, and when people see you smile, they want to approach you. They want to talk to you. So I definitely think that it has helped me come out of my shell a lot.
I think, it's Cardi B who says, got a bag and fixed my teeth. You're not the only one on that journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Part of the reason we wanted to bring that up is because it is a physical, almost metaphor, I feel like, for some of the changes that you've gone through in the past year. And that's something that we're going to be hitting on a lot this episode, like the transformation, how to make the changes that you want to make in your life. And I think what will be helpful for anyone listening to this is also to understand pre-baby teeth, pre-2023, what did your life look like before that?
I tended to not want to go socialize. I was always in computer science. So I went to Clemson University for computer science. And when you go into computer science, there are a bunch of nerds around and all you do is sit at your computer. You don't talk to anyone. And then I went into the web development space and you did the same thing there. So I never really developed the social skills that I wanted to develop. I didn't even realize I wanted to develop them until I got into the real estate realm. So I now work for a lending company called RehabWallet, and we lend money to real estate investors. And in order to grow your business, you have to go network. So I slowly started to go to masterminds, and I slowly started to go to real estate investing networking events and conferences. And then I realized that I actually enjoyed it. But back in the day, I used to be the person like in a mastermind, you would go around the circle and everybody would introduce themselves and I could just feel my heart. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, but I could just feel my heart pounding, 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 pounding until it got to me. And then I was terrified. I didn't want to speak at all. So I slowly worked through that until I got to the point where I've enjoyed networking with people. And now that's how you know me, and that's who I am now, as somebody who really loves to socialize. I love being around people. I love great conversation. And it's definitely a representation, my teeth, of how I've changed throughout this year, for sure.
So it sounds like the teeth kind of gave you that extra confidence when you're going, especially to these networking events and these real estate events where you're putting your face out there, you're putting yourself out there and talking to people. It gave you that extra confidence, that extra booster to really socialize with people. Speaking in public was a big goal of yours as well. And you mentioned that you had been the person to go to the masterminds and feel uncomfortable speaking. How do you get from that to where you are now, where you're always like one of the most confident people when networking and you're doing public speaking, paid public speaking opportunities? Like, how do you get from there to there?
So the way that I did this is I just thrive on the challenge. So I knew that I was not the person to want to get up in front of people and speak. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this for myself because these are the types of people that I look up to, the people who are confident. I want to be like them. So I started to put myself out there more. I said to my work, hey, I'd like to be in front of more rooms. Can you put me in front of more rooms? So they started to offer me public speaking opportunities, and then I started to schedule some of them myself. I started to host events, not only at my own home through meetup.com, but also through my work. So I now host a women's real estate group because I just said I wanted to do it, and then the opportunity came to me. I'm a big proponent of law of attraction, so I think if you speak something, it will come to you.
Yes.
The universe will grant you whatever you wish. So definitely just speaking my mind, saying what I wanted, drew those opportunities to me. But also, I took action. One of my favorite quotes is, things started to come to fruition when I prayed with my feet. That's not the exact quote, but I love that. When you actually take action, things start to occur for you. So one example is I started Toastmasters. Toastmasters is an international group where you can go and practice public speaking in front of a welcoming crowd. They're all there to learn. They're all there to grow in the public speaking realm. So you go and you give speeches and they give you critique in a very gentle way. So I did Toastmasters. I took improv. Improv was a huge benefit for me because when you get on stage and you try to make people laugh, and you don't know what's coming next, that is the scariest thing in the world. And if you can do improv, I really think you can do anything. So improv was definitely a huge one for me. I was so terrified to get on stage, and after I did it, I was like, you know what? I got this. I could do anything now. I could speak in front of crowds, and I feel way more comfortable getting up and publicly speaking. I had my first paid public speech this year as well, or this past year. And it was incredible. All of these different steps that I took is what led me to this transformation of being the person hiding behind the poles and the masterminds to the person in front of the room getting paid to speak. It's been an amazing journey.
I'm curious to know, did you start the year and think, okay, I know the steps I'm going to take. I'm going to do Toastmasters. I'm going to do improv. Walk me through what that process looked like for you.
The process, I did not know what to expect. I didn't plan any of this. It just happened. And as it started to happen, I was like, ooh, I like this. Let me do more of this. I first met my partner, Paul, in early 2023. And he just goes to every event on the planet. Like, we met Sammy at a meetup group where you talk about death. Like, I don't,
as one does.
Yes, just normal, typical conversation. So I would just go with him to any event because I wanted to be around him, but also I realized I enjoyed it. So if he was going to a networking event, I wanted to be there. I wanted to meet people. I really enjoyed it. And then on top of that, we started to host this event called Deep Talk. And Deep Talk is a meetup group, but we get together and we talk about non-surface level questions. Like, one might be, what's your problem? Or do you think it's important to be remembered when you die? Or what's the question that haunts you? These non-surface level topics, as I started to dive into those meetup groups and be a part of them, I was like, oh, I love this deep conversation. It's just like what I thrive on. So I didn't plan any of this. It happened. And then I started to see opportunities in front of me and I just took them. I'm like, if I don't take the opportunity, then I will never grow. So when the person who was running the women's real estate group moved to Arizona, I was like, oh, I'll take that. Can I have that one? Or a spot in Toastmasters opened up to become the VP of membership. I'm like, oh, I'll take that one. Can I have that one too? So I just took every opportunity that came my way. And that's what led me to where I am now.
I think this is such a great point here because sometimes we can have like a general idea of what direction we want to move into, but we don't know like every little step that it's going to take to go there. For example, you wanted more public speaking. You want to become a better public speaker, but maybe you're not at that moment knowing every single little thing that's going to take you there. But what you did is you just put yourself in more situations where you could come up against more information and more opportunities to practice that. And I think that's such a great takeaway for us and for our listeners is you don't have to have the blueprint. You can just move in the direction of the things that you want to do. And a lot of times those opportunities or those ways to improve will just naturally show up.
Yeah, I can actually tell you a funny story about this. So
Yes.
I have this laundry room that has no tile on the floor. It's just concrete. It's just ugly concrete. And I had wall paint out one day and Paul was like, hey, can I paint a little spot in the floor in here? Because it's just grungy. And I mean, he didn't say that, but I was thinking, not nice. I was thinking he was thinking that, but he was like, I just want to paint a little spot in the floor. And I'm like, well, it's wall paint. You can't do that. Like you can't do that. I was very stern about it. You can't do that. Eventually I just gave in. I'm like, you know what? If it'll make you happy, you do it. So he painted a little spot in the floor and it made him happy, and seeing him happy made me happy. And he was like, why were you so against that? How much of a plan do you need in advance in order to accomplish something? And I was like, oh, I'm at like 87%. Like I need to know a lot of the steps in order to get started. Like I want a plan, which is funny considering I didn't have a plan for becoming a paid public speaker or getting good at that. But I want to know the plan. I want to know the steps. And he's complete opposite. He's like, if you just take the first step, then you know, okay, well, maybe I didn't like that, but I'll do this instead. Or that didn't work, but I'll try this next time. So I'm learning more to adapt and just take the first step and then just see what happens. Because if you don't take that step, nothing will unfold for you.
Previously, prior to this year, you would always put other people first. What do you think the origin of that behavior was?
I grew up in a divorced household. So my parents were married for 25 years, and then the worst thing imaginable happened and they split up. So it was not great for my family. There was a lot of resentment. And so I was the baby. And I really was trying to just please everybody around me. Everybody seemed so unhappy and so upset. I definitely had an amazing childhood, but I always wanted to make everybody happy, so I started to accommodate everyone. My parents, my siblings, everybody around me. I grew into this habit of starting to accommodate people and put everybody first, and I've gotten to the point now where I'm growing out of that, and I'm learning and being cognizant that I'm even doing it. But up until this point of this past year, when I started to change that habit, I would assume that everybody's unhappiness was because of me. I just had that ingrained in my brain. If somebody was having a bad day, or we call it kicking their cat, somebody was kicking their cat, I just assumed it was me, like I was the problem. So trying to please everybody, I always said yes over and over and over again. I'm like, yeah, I'll do that, no problem. And then I got to the point where I was overwhelmed, and people pleasing creates just overwhelm and a whirlwind of tasks because you're trying to do everything for everybody and you're never putting yourself first. So I had this past year to learn how to put myself first.
Do you remember how you recognized that you were people pleasing or that you were always accommodating everybody's needs? Did you just kind of realize that on your own, or how did you pick up on that?
It took a book for me to realize that I was doing that. I have been reading, it's behind me, this book called Not Nice. And the book is all about how people will try to please others, not because they want to, but because they're afraid of the reaction, the response from those people. So they offer to do X, Y, and Z because they think it will make that person happy. They take on extra workload because of that. And I had to read that book and just be aware of it. You don't even realize that you're doing it. It's such a habit that you have to break. But yeah, I was always assuming people were mad at me, people were upset with me, and I did everything in my power to try to make them happy. And to be honest, you just can't make people happy unless they want to be happy. And not everything that they're expressing is my problem. It is not always about me. So I have to realize that I'm the actress I'm the superstar in my own show, and not everything's about me. People don't care that much. So I had to learn to just sit back and think, this person's problem is not my problem, and I just need to focus on myself. But yes, it took a book and being aware of it and just sitting back and saying, what am I doing right now that I shouldn't be doing? And then changing the way that I'm responding to that person to know that I'm putting myself first. Not Nice is a fantastic book for anybody watching or listening to this. They will get a lot of value out of it.
I really love the point that you're making here because I think I see it in myself, the people pleasing, the putting other people first. It's almost something that you think is virtuous. Like, oh, I'm, I'll sacrifice myself. I'll eat second. I will, let other people go before me, or I'll put their needs before thinking about my own. And I love what you're saying here, where it's like all of a sudden you're saying yes to everything. You're overwhelmed. You're seeing it bleed into your life. I'm curious if you noticed specifically when you're talking about feeling overwhelmed and sort of saying yes to everything, were there certain aspects of your life where you felt this in particular?
Definitely work is a big one for me, and I think family is a big one for me. So this past year, for example, I know I had to set boundaries with my family because I was always making decisions based on what I thought would please them. So family, because you're so close to them and you really just want to make them happy because they're the people you typically will love the most, you make exceptions for them and you bend the rules and you think, well, that's not really what I want to do, but I'll do it for them. I had to set boundaries with my family to not prioritize them and their needs. And then I also have to do that with work. I'm noticing a lot at work that I do things for people because I want them to like me, and I have to stop doing that. So for example, I might really need my team's feedback. I have a small team underneath me. I might need their feedback on something, but instead of asking them to do it and then present a few things to me, I'll do it on their behalf because I want them to like me. I'm like, hey, look, I did this thing for you. Don't you like me more now? So I'm having to stop myself and realize you need to let them grow, because what you're actually doing is I'm preventing my team from growing by doing things on their behalf. I'm hindering their growth and their authenticity. So I definitely think that work and family have been two major points of being not nice that I have to grow in.
We're Indian, so we totally understand having to set boundaries with your family. Like in Indian culture, people are like, oh, you're not coming? You don't love me. Just kill me. And you're like, okay, I think these are problematic. But you grow up with that. That's like reinforced, even if they're just maybe doing it to be funny or off the cuff. You grow up and you start to apply it to different parts of your life because, man, if I don't do what these people want, or if I set boundaries with these people, then they're not going to like me, or I'm betraying them, or I'm not showing them that I love you. And so that really resonates with me, both in work and with family.
Exactly. And in this last year, 2023, it sounds like you were moving towards a lot of your own personal goals in your life. One thing is, when we prioritize other people, we're not prioritizing ourselves. And then we have this huge task list of things to do for other people, or to please other people, or to avoid conflict with other people. And we don't get to do things for ourselves a lot of the time. Did you find that you had to make time for yourself in this last year?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll use this as an example. My work is reading this book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. And in this book, they talk about how most of your day is what we call the whirlwind. So it's like all these tasks that just get put on your plate, put on your plate, put on your plate, and they're urgent and you have to do them. You must do them in order to grow your business and in order for your business to succeed from a business perspective. But you don't ever set aside time to do the things that matter. So what they say in that book is take 80%, do the 80-20 rule. 80% goes to the whirlwind and all those tasks that have to be done. But you have to dedicate 20% of your time to whatever your goal is, whether this is personal or professional, in order to accomplish it. If you don't designate time for that, you're never going to get to it. You're never going to be ready for it. You're always going to be accomplishing the other tasks that everybody else wants you to do.
I wanted to go back to improv as well, because I've heard a lot of people say that improv helps build their confidence in a public setting. Why do you think improv is so helpful in public speaking or just in conversations in general?
You learn so much in improv about yourself. It's funny. When I first went to improv, I realized that I was very combative in the way that I approached situations. So, for example, you might get on stage and you have one other person with you. Well, your job in improv is to make that person look good. That's your whole job. You're supposed to make them look good, which makes the audience like you more. Because if you watch two people on stage who are fighting each other, well, that's not really enjoyable. So you have to make the other person look good, and then the audience will just follow along, right? Telling a story. Well, what I noticed is that I would get up there and I would be very combative with that person. It was like I was competing with them. So I realized that I was doing that in my daily life as well. I was doing the not nice thing. I was thinking everybody was thinking negatively of me, and I needed to combat them because they were coming after me, or whatever was going on in my brain. I was trying to compete or be combative with them. So I had to adapt to that and change it and say, hey, I want to make the people around me look good. And so now I've adopted that in my everyday life to make the other people around me look great. The other thing I'd say is that improv makes you more of an active listener. So there's this one exercise in improv. It's called conducted stories. And you all stand in a line on stage, and this person who's conducting will just point at you. And you're telling a story, but you're only telling your portion of the story when they point at you. So they're really conducting a story. That was probably the absolute most difficult exercise in improv for me, because I would realize that I wasn't listening to anybody as they were talking. I was so terrified that I wasn't an active listener. I had to catch myself and be like, hey, close your eyes, look at the person speaking, do whatever you have to do in order to actively listen to them. Because if you're not listening, you can't respond. And if you can't respond, then you don't have a conversation. Somebody's just talking at you, and you can't hold a conversation. So I use that in my everyday life as well. I realized that as people were talking to me, I was thinking about how I was going to respond. And if you think about how you're going to respond, you're not listening to what they're saying. So I had to learn to not do that. So improv taught me a lot about myself. I learned to be more of an active listener, and definitely to not be as combative and think everybody around me is thinking negative thoughts, for sure.
It's funny because hearing you say that makes me think about what we were talking about earlier about the accommodating other people and kind of that people-pleasing tendency and not wanting anyone to be upset. And I think when you say that, I think about myself and how sometimes I'm worried about upsetting someone or making sure I come off polite or nice. And because of that, I'm in my own head and I'm not listening actively.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like that kind of goes together. And then improv has that way, the storytelling, the story that you guys create, that kind of forces you to become more active and get out of your own head, which it sounds like that also helps undo that behavior of always thinking about other people.
Definitely. I definitely agree with you. I think that in some ways, for sure, being in improv and having to actively listen to other people, you're not in your own head. You're on stage in front of a lot of other people, and you have to get out of your own head. One of the other things that they talk about is there's this exercise called freeze frame, or freeze tag almost in a way, where two people are doing something on stage and the rest of you are in the back, and you say freeze, and then you go tag them out and you get in their place. Well, if you're in your own head thinking about, what am I going to do to jump in? What am I going to say? Then you're never going to get out there and do anything. So they teach you a lot to just jump out there and like do something, and it'll work out fine. Otherwise, you'll be the person in the back row just sitting there looking awkward because you never took a chance to jump out there. So yeah, I definitely agree that improv makes you get out of your own head and just join the game.
Yes, and see what I did there? It is interesting. A key theme, I think, too, here is when we think we're being nice, to your point, we're in our heads and we're very focused on ourselves. I've seen this with myself, too, where we're doing an icebreaker and I don't even hear the person next to me because that's when I'm the most focused on what I'm going to say. And yet the things they teach you in improv, where it's active listening, where it's making the other person look good, those are actually nice things. Those are actually caring things because you're thinking about the other person. You're, like you said, trying to make them look good. You're working together as a team. And I think that's such a great flip because I know I'm in the same boat where sometimes I'm so in my head and I'm so worried about what people think about me. It's not about them. It's not me being kind to them. It's really just about me. But if I'm actually paying attention, present in the moment, we can have such a much more fulfilling relationship.
Yeah, actually, I'll say to that, one of my favorite books, and I know, I think, Sammy, you like this book as well, How to Win Friends and Influence People. He talks about how a person's own name is the sweetest sound to them. So to me, this is kind of similar where you listening to somebody as they speak, whether it's you listening to them introduce themselves and hearing their name and then repeating it back to them, or listening to their story and providing input, people like you more when you're actually paying attention. So if you get out of this mindset of, oh, what am I going to say to make people like me? Well, they'll like you more if you just shut your mouth and open your ears.
It's so true. I love that book. I recently reread it, and it's amazing how many nuggets are in that book. It's just crazy. I wanted to ask you about the Summit of Greatness. I know that was something you went to in 2023 that also helped your year of transformation.
Yes. So Summit of Greatness is put on by Lewis Howes. He does the School of Greatness. Lewis Howes' School of Greatness is something I enjoy, as well as Tom Bilyeu's Impact Theory. But School of Greatness and Summit of Greatness is by Lewis Howes. and he hosts an event every single year. And this past year, he had it in Columbus, Ohio, and Paul and I went, and it was probably one of the best things I have ever done. So I went to this event, and I just had this aha moment while I was there. And I'm like, this is what I enjoy doing. I enjoy listening to people speak, or listening to people on a podcast or a video or whatever it may be. I just thrive on learning. And I know, Sammy, you're the same way. We're both, if you've taken the Sparketype quiz, we're both mavens. We just like thrive on learning. So in that event, I was like, wow, this is a big deal for me. I'm realizing what I actually want to do with my life, because before I just walked around with no purpose, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't feel it was important to know what I wanted to do. And that goes back to me accommodating everybody else, because I had no time to think about what I wanted to do. I was too busy putting everybody else first. So I realized in that moment, you know what? I'm going to actually take this into my life and make this a thing for me. So I decided I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to propagate information out to other people and maybe help them. I want to interview experts that can come in and talk about mindset and entrepreneurship and building wealth, because it's not selfish for me to learn these things. It's okay to put yourself first. So in that moment, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to learn, but at the same time, I can help other people with this and give back. I did this exercise recently that I really enjoyed. It was from Impact Theory. And you go through these 3 different columns. And the first one was, what do you want to accomplish in life? And the second column is, what do you need to do in order to do the things in column 1? And the third was, how do you give back? So for me, it was giving back by just sharing knowledge with other people. So Summit of Greatness for sure changed my life and changed the trajectory of my life.
I feel like also for you to say that it was one of the best things you did is no small compliment, because you go to a lot of conferences and you go to a lot of events. So it's not like this is the one thing you did and it changed your life, which would also be great. But I feel like you probably have a high standard as well, because you've seen different versions of the same thing.
Yeah, I would definitely encourage people to just explore that. Like, what are you doing that is beneficial to you? Are you doing anything that you want to be doing? And if not, take some time to think about that. Prioritize yourself for a minute and say, what do I want to do with my life? And make a plan, take the first step, right? We talked about earlier, you just have to take the first step to find the way.
Okay, I gotta ask you about something that you and Paul have said before that I'm curious about. You guys have talked about disassociating yourself from meek people. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes. Paul and I have gone to a lot of networking events. We go to at least one every night, sometimes 2. And in one weekend, we did 7 events.
Gosh.
It was wild. So we get a lot of practice networking and socializing with people. And we've noticed over time that the people who stand in the corner, like I used to do, they lack confidence. They typically lack drive, and we prefer to associate ourselves with the people who are in front of the room or the people in the middle of the room who are talking, socializing, because to be frank, we want to be around people who are looking to accomplish something in life. We ask people all the time, over the next 12 months, what are you looking to accomplish? And half the people we ask don't even know. The people with drive want to be around people with drive. So disassociating ourselves with meek people is just a way to protect our time.
I love that, because at first you hear that, like, disassociating yourself with meek people, and I thought, I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds a little harsh. Meek people might be nice.
They are nice.
They are nice. I was thinking about, why is it that meek people maybe don't have that personal drive? And sometimes when I think about it, I'm like, it maybe is that they're in their own head thinking about other people too. I'm reflecting on times in my life where I've been meek, and a lot of times it's because I'm so focused on everybody else that I'm not thinking about myself and my own goals. So I love that you guys have found that moving towards people who have that drive
then inspires you, because it's so true. We're the aggregate of the 5 people we surround ourselves with. So we want to be around people who are also wanting to change their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. We follow somebody named Ed Milet, and he talks about thermostat raisers. I don't know if he's the one who coined that, but thermostat raisers basically imagine the people around you, if they're at a higher temperature than you, you're going to go up in temperature. If you're surrounding yourselves with people who are at a lower temperature, then you're going to adapt and lower yourself to their standards. So we're always looking for what we call thermostat raisers. The people who are meekly standing in the corner, who aren't active participants, we want to avoid them and go for the people who are actively participating. And as I've read this book, Not Nice, I'm learning that I don't have to justify that. If I want to be around those people, that's my preference, and that's okay. I don't have to give a reason for that. I do that a lot. I do a lot of explaining, and I'm learning. I have to stop explaining myself and just say, you know what, I do like this thing or I don't like this thing, and that's okay. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but it's mine, so do what you want to do, and I'll do what I want to do.
One thing I really like too is you said you were that person. We spoke at the beginning of this, and you said you would go to a mastermind and sort of dread speaking, and you went and you really took the initiative to transform your life, which I think is really awesome, because even being meek, it could be something that's just a season of your life. Like maybe you haven't had the tools yet. Maybe you haven't taken that first step yet to be a different person. And I agree with what you're saying. When you start to take those steps and when you start to raise your own temperature, as you're saying, then other people will also be attracted to you. Like it's a two-way street. Like it's not just that you don't want to hang out with them, but it's also that like you can, by being that person, other people are attracted to you and your energy.
Yes, it goes back to law of attraction. Like I think if you say what you want in life, the universe will grant it to you. So if you want to be an incredible writer, but you never write, or you never associate yourselves with other writers, or you never send them your work, you're never going to get good feedback. Like you have to put yourself out there and ask for what you need, and it will come to you.
I love that. So it sounds like this year you had a huge transformation. You went from someone who was self-proclaimed as meek, the person who tries to hide in the masterminds, to now going
with baby teeth.
With baby teeth, to now somebody who goes to 1 or 2 meetups a day, one time 7 meetups in a weekend, and is networking, is doing improv, is doing public speaking opportunities, and is also coming up with a purpose for your life too. And I know, with it being the beginning of the year, a lot of people have resolutions or goals that they're trying to reach. What would you recommend to those people? Like, what advice would you give them?
Going back to that 4DX book, the 4 Disciplines of Execution, one of the main salient points of that book is that you can't focus on too many things at one time because you will never accomplish them. That is one of the reasons why you often see people will say, what are your top 3 things for the day instead of your top 10 or your top 20? Because you can only focus on so many things in one day. And one of the points of that book is that if you focus on 1 goal or 2 goals, you will get it done. But if you focus on 10 goals, your attention is going to be in so many directions that you're not going to be able to focus on the main things that you want to accomplish. You're going to be striving for too much. So I would definitely suggest to narrow it down to 1 or 2 things that you really want to tackle for the year or for the quarter or however you like to do your goals, and just hyper focus on that. It's crazy because I've heard the word hyperfocus like 400 times in the past year, and it took me a while to realize, but that was what I decided my brand was going to be. I was like, I've heard this word so many times, it's insane to me. It was like a synchronicity in my life that I was like, hyperfocus. And it's something that I needed myself because my attention was just all over the place, accommodating everybody, doing all these whirlwind tasks. I needed to hyperfocus on what I wanted in life. So ultimately, that's what I would suggest. If you're doing resolutions, hyperfocus on like 1 or 2 things and tackle it and accomplish it in the best freaking way that you can. And you can do that every year for the rest of your life, and never stop. I love that. Don't give your attention away to everybody else or everything else. Focus on you.
That is such a great place to end. And I think it really ties in together so many of the themes that we've been talking about. I love what you're saying about hyper-focusing on one or two things in a year, because I agree. If you try to do 10, you're going to accomplish nothing. But if you do 1 or 2 a year for the rest of your life, that could be 30, 40, 50 major things that you do to move your life forward. And I think you're such a shining example of that, going from somebody who was working all the time, somebody who felt they were going into these meetings, feeling pretty meek, feeling like you weren't raising your hand or maybe nervous about speaking, and really turning that around where so much of your time is now focused on going to these networking events, going to these conferences, and really up-leveling yourself, challenging yourself with things like Toastmasters and improv. And so we find that really admiring. And I think it just shows that, yeah, if you focus on something, you can really make a lot of big changes in 1 year.
And if people want to learn more about you, where can they find you?
I am on social at The Hoop Investor. And then my website is hyperfocus.com, and that's HYPR focus.com. It doesn't have an E in it, so hyperfocus.
And we'll share those in our show notes. Can you explain why The Hoop Investor?
One of my passions that I acquired in 2014 was hula hooping. So I had my share of fun times where I used to go to music festivals and have a nice party, and I admired somebody there that was hula hooping, and I'm like, I love that. It's almost like this meditative state that they're in, and I wanted that so badly. I had always been somebody who would draw to be in a meditative state. I love drawing, but I was like, I want something more active. So I acquired that skill of hula hooping, and I do it all the time now. I love it. Just learning new tricks, and it just puts me in this meditative state where I can just be me and be my authentic self, and people think it's cool. So people are like, you should bring your hula hoop to our networking event. Like, well, if it makes me stand out and people like it, sure, why not? So The Hoop Investor, that's where that came from.
I love it. It really shows that you can have two seemingly different passions and then combine them together if you need to.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Harris, for coming on our podcast today. I think our listeners will get a lot of value from your journey this past year and a lot of inspiration if they are looking to meet their resolutions this year and meet their goals this year. A lot of good inspiration to help move them forward.
Yes, it was a joy to have you, Harris.
Thank y'all so much. I enjoyed it.
Takeaways.
Sammy, it was so great to have Harris on Build a Wealthy Spirit.
I learned so much from her journey, and it really inspired me.
Yes, and I love that we brought her on in January at the beginning of the year. Whenever you're listening to this, I think people who listen to this podcast are very growth-minded and are often like me and thinking about their next big transformation. And so for her, from her baby teeth to her fear of public speaking, she is somebody who really entered last year knowing she wanted to make changes in her life. Going from somebody who was working all the time and shy to now somebody who is speaking at real estate conferences, is hosting events with her partner, multiple events, deep conversation, somebody who is becoming a pillar of the community.
One thing that really resonated with me that Harris talked about was this idea that when we put other people first, when we prioritize other people's needs, when we try to accommodate and people please, we actually do not leave any space for us pursuing our own goals. And that this can sometimes lead to a lack of integrity because we say we're going to do something and then we've filled up our schedule with other people's needs and we don't always accomplish the things that we say we're going to do.
It's something that I've struggled with in my life and something I've noticed in myself. There was a time where I was super flaky with my plans and I would cancel last minute. And I didn't like the person I was becoming. I don't like being an unreliable person. And so for a little while, I told myself, and this was especially true when I was drinking, I was like, if I say yes to something, I have to attend so I can feel the pain of making all of these promises. And I got so tired that after a while, I learned to say no. At least to say no and think, is my cup filled? Do I have the time, energy, and money to do this? And that's not selfish, but I think that we often think that if we don't put ourselves first, if we're putting others first, that's more selfless. And it's really not something you can do effectively if you're not taking care of yourself and your own needs first.
Another thing I really like that Harris talked about is taking the first step. Harris, when she started 2023, she didn't necessarily know exactly what steps she needed to become the person that she wanted to become. But she knew she wanted to speak more, she wanted to be more vocal, she wanted to be more in public. That started with real estate events. Then that led to other meetups. That led to meeting her partner. That led to them hosting their own meetups. That led to improv, led to Toastmasters. All these different things happened because she started that little push on the dominoes. So we don't and can't know all the steps that we need to take, but we just need to move into that direction of our highest excitement.
Exactly. I think that was another really great takeaway for anyone listening. Something that really resonated with me. It's know what you want to change and just take the first step. You don't have to have the full plan set up. I'm like Harris. I believe in the law of attraction. I believe in manifestation. I think when you take the first step and you put your intention out into the world, your guides will come. Your teachers will come. The opportunities that are there, they will become available to you. Sometimes they are available to us, but if we don't know that this is the bigger dream we want, that I want to be a public speaker, maybe then she wouldn't have put improv together with that. But because she took the first step, which I think it's so funny that it's like her baby teeth, which is right, confidence. You know, she was like, you know what? I didn't feel as confident and I fixed my teeth and I knew I wanted to be able to smile. I wanted to be able to go out and be in front of people. And if that's part of that journey, like, I love that.
I love that part too, Michelle, because it's very relatable. Sometimes we have one thing that's bothering us and we're like, maybe it's kind of vain to fix that, or maybe I don't want to go overboard. But it's like, come on, just fix it. If you fix it and you are happy about it, you can do what you like. So
yeah,
I know being on sabbatical, looking better has significantly improved my confidence. When I was at work, I was always in scrub mode, and I just kind of felt like that too. I felt blah.
I would have said that it didn't really matter, but I think I'm blessed with resting smiley face.
Oh, here she goes.
But the truth is when I had to wear a mask, I realized that my eyes have zero expression.
It's really true. Like, she will put the mask on and do various faces, and I have no idea what it could be.
The default face, like my eyes just look like they're piercing into you. And I was wondering why everyone seemed like ruder or meaner or like not as friendly during COVID.
Yes. It's the difference between these beautiful dimples smiling back at you or these beady eyes glaring at you. And it's kind of comical.
It's so comical. But all that to say, if you are thinking about, hey, it's January, it's the beginning of the year, maybe you like resolutions, maybe you don't, but I bet there is something on your list of things that you want to do. Maybe it's being a really great parent. Maybe it's exercising more. Maybe it's public speaking like Harris. I love what she's saying. Choose that one thing, hyper focus, and let the universe come and help you. Take that first step. And I really do believe that your guides will come.
Absolutely, Michelle.
Let us know what you thought about this interview. And if you have suggestions for that as well, if you had a year of transformation, what worked well for you? We would love to know your tips. It's the beginning of the year. Sammy and I got our own personal goals. Sammy's playing in her garden of abundance while working out. I'm over here. I'm trying to write. I'm trying to find love. Let us know. We'd love to hear your tips. buildawellthespirit.com. And you can find any information for Harris in our show notes.
And most importantly, be sure to join us next week as we put down the rulebook and we rethink the status quo.